When many Minecrafters think about Redstone, they tend to think that it's something meant for computer geeks, or tech buffs, or people like that. They think of it as something that's way too complicated for them to use in their own Minecraft worlds in any meaningful way. And this is a shame, because once you understand the basic process of designing Redstone, it becomes a lot easier to understand a surprising amount of it. So today, we're going to go through that process, and hopefully shed some light on how you can begin your Redstone journey. Our example today will be making a hidden room inside this little house segment. Before we begin, let's talk terms. All redstone contraptions, at their core, are comprised of three main parts. First, you have the trigger. This can be a button, lever, pressure plate, or anything of the like. The trigger is what sends the redstone signal after it's been activated. Second, you have your system. The system is what carries and conveys the signal that the trigger sent. In its basic form, the system is no more than a trail of redstone dust, but we can then modify the system with things like repeaters to delay the redstone signal if we so desire. Thirdly and finally, we have our output. Our output is what receives the signal from the system and then changes in some way. An easy example of this is a piston extending once a signal has been sent into it via the system. Other examples might be a dispenser shooting an arrow, a minecart moving along a railway, or a block of TNT deciding to make like a pufferfish and blow up. So all we have to do is set up these three components in our desired way, and then we have a working contraption. But that's easier said than done sometimes, so next, let's go over the 6 steps of how to create basically any redstone contraption. Please note that while the redstone itself behaves differently, these principles can apply to both Bedrock and Java players alike. Step 1. Place your final output. The output, you see, is the whole point of the system and the trigger. Without any output, we're just left flicking a lever that does nothing, and generally looking pretty silly. And especially when we want to make a door or some kind of entrance, we want to be sure that the final output is somewhere where we want it to be. Step 2. Map out your limitations. When dealing with most contraptions, there are certain restrictions we often find ourselves working under. This most often means the walls of whatever structure we find ourselves working in, but it can really be any place we don't want our system to be. In this scenario, we know we want this block to lower down into a secret basement. Therefore, before we lay down any of our redstone, we need to make sure that we've built up the area that's going to be around the output. That way, we don't accidentally get in the way of the redstone that we're placing down later on. Once we know where the redstone won't be allowed to go, it's time for step 3. Place your trigger. Different triggers, it should be noted, behave differently. Buttons only send a temporary signal to their output. Levers will send signal indefinitely until we decide to turn it off. And pressure plates can be triggered by just about anything with legs. So make sure you know ahead of time what trigger you want to start your given contraption. In this scenario, the button makes most sense. Not only have we already been gifted 4 by the decorative nature of this build, but also that means that the door will close behind us and it won't accidentally be triggered by whatever sheep decides to walk in through the door. Let's maybe take away the extra 3 so that we don't confuse ourselves while we're trying to build this little device. And let's also put one here so that we can trigger the contraption from the other side. So now that we have our trigger and our output set up, it's time for step 4, apply a basic system. Before we use anything fancy, we need to make sure that our trigger and our output are connected. The basic system is nothing more than a trail of redstone dust between the trigger and the output. However, there is something more to be said here. You see, in our example, we have 2 different triggers as well as 2 different output devices. And that complicates things. Gosh darn it! So how do we solve this little debacle? What you want to do in this case is link both of your outputs together in their own little mini system. Just remember, when you're dealing with moving pistons, feed the redstone into where the piston is going to be, not where it is now. So what this does is turn 2 outputs essentially into one. It's now no longer about, I need to activate these 2 pistons. It's now, I need to activate this one system. And that becomes a lot easier to think about than 2 pistons that we have to synchronize. It's almost more of a mind trick than anything else, but it's still really helpful. The triggers are going to work in much the same way. It no longer is going to be, we need this button pressed. it's now going to be we need a button pressed. And that gives us a lot more flexibility when dealing with multiple triggers designed for the same contraption. And now, once we have our trigger system and our output system, we can combine the two and make a fully complete basic system. Now it's time for step 5. Modify and adjust the system as needed. Remember, we want the buttons to deactivate the pistons. So first things first, we can change the default state of the output by placing a redstone torch right between the input and the output systems. Now the torch can keep the pistons active until the button feeds some redstone signal into it and tells it to stop, just for a little while. And one more little thing. Extended pistons, we know, refuse to be pushed around by their fellow pistons, no matter how often we try to put signal into them. So what we need is some way to make sure that this line of redstone deactivates before this one. Otherwise, this piston will still be extended, and this one won't be able to pull it down. And this is a task we know we can accomplish quite simply with a redstone repeater. So some people don't actually know how these work. Most videos will simply tell you to set the repeater and assume you know what that means. To some, it may seem obvious, but others might need a simple, quick explanation. When we say tick, we mean the base amount of time it takes for Minecraft to apply a change. This piston, for instance, takes 1 tick to extend, and another tick to retract. And what the repeater does is delay the redstone signal by 1, 2, 3, or 4 ticks. This becomes easiest to see when you have redstone dust, 1, 2, 3, and 4 ticks worth of delay, all side by side. Step 6. Test your contraption. So we click this button and it didn't go as we thought. This wooden block still needs to go down another space. So we return to step 5 and edit our system accordingly. So what have we learned from this little test? Well, we now know that most of it works. We just need one little blip of redstone signal to be sent into this piston while it's pulled down here. That way, the wooden plank up above is going to come down to where we want it to be. Unfortunately, we know the perfect way to send 1 tick of signal is the observer. For those who don't know, an observer detects any change in the space in front of it, and then reacts by sending 1 tick of redstone signal out the back. That means at any time we place something down here, or charge some redstone signal, decharge some redstone signal, or really anything, it's going to detect that change and send out 1 brief little tick of redstone signal. Now back to our devices. Now we just need to be able to trigger it with the rest of the contraption. So let's just hook it up to the rest of the bottom of the output, and maybe throw in 1 repeater here set to 3 ticks. That way, this will only activate after this one has had a chance to pull down the top piston. So now we return to step 6 and give the contraption another test. This time, we click the button, and it works perfectly. No matter which side we press the button from, the block gets pulled down 2 spaces enough to get into our little hallway. And with our successful test, our contraption is done. Thank you so much for watching this little video. I hope it was helpful. If you'd like to see more videos on understanding redstone, then maybe consider subscribing. I have several more on the way. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one.